Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, I'm Katie McGowan-Mucci. I'm here as the Dean of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. I have not met you. Please introduce yourself to me throughout the day. I'm meeting a lot of new faces and names, and I'm looking forward to meeting all of you in the room. So I'm going to kick us off and go over the schedule for the day. So I'll give you sort of the lay of the land of assessment, what it means to me, and where our campus is headed over the next 3 years as it relates to assessment. We also have a guest today. We have Nicole Chatterose from the Student Council on Assessment. Nicole, you want to wave? So Nicole is going to be doing 2 back-to-back presentations for us today on non-classroom assessment specifically. And then we're going to spend the majority of the day going through the workbook, which I'll dive into a bit in a moment, and working on developing 3-year assessment plans for each of your units. Okay, so it's really the goal of the day is to learn a lot about what assessment is, how to make it work for you, and how to take the next step. Okay? Okay, so I like to start by saying assessment to me is really about telling a story, and it's about our promise to students. So what assessment allows us to do is it establishes for us our purpose, our mission, and what our promise is to students. What do we want students to do, or to know, or to be during their time here at Delphi, and then through graduation, through the life cycle of that student. And then how do we collect data and measure and inform ourselves and our students how we measure up to that promise. So that happens in courses, that happens at the program level, that happens outside of the classroom, that happens in the residence hall. Every single person here touches the lives of the student. And so assessment really is about deciding what's important, checking ourselves to make sure we're doing it, and where there's areas that need improvement, we tweak our practice to again meet that promise to students. So that's in a nutshell how I think of assessment. I also wanted to point out that there's a balance between using assessment of student learning and student experience for improvement and for accountability. And I think, unfortunately, assessment for accountability has sort of taken a lead a lot of times. So yes, we must do this for those states. We must do this to stay open, which really takes away from the whole purpose of it, which is to improve student learning and the student life while we are here at Delphi. So I want to keep that in mind, that the true meaning of it is to improve, and that continuous improvement will help us meet our goals and help meet the goals of our students' lives. Okay? Okay, so for today, for assessment day, we have 4 learning outcomes. So by the end of today, all units will begin to develop a 3-year assessment plan. Second learning outcome for today is that all units will describe both direct and indirect measures. Okay, in the workbook, there is a page that describes that for you. Also on the blue handout at the front table, there's another document there that will help with direct and indirect measures. Learning outcome number 3, participants will identify the assessment responsibilities required of each unit. And learning outcome number 4, you will articulate the relationship between assessment and budgeting at a macro level. Okay, so those are the goals and learning outcomes we hope you walk away with today. And we're going to assess that too. Okay, so we're going to dive in a bit. I'm going to focus on just 3 middle state standards, and the first of which is mission. Okay, so mission really allows institutions, I'm talking institutional mission. It allows us to tell our unique promise to students. So what is it that Delphi does? As you know, we have recently revamped our mission and strategic framework, which we will learn about next week when President Liberty outlines that for us. But what I want you to know is that when we're assessing our program goals and our unit goals and our outcomes, it always has to tie back to that mission. Okay, we have to find our place within that mission. And those states will keep coming back to the mission being critical in the assessment process. So I want you to remember that. Not only at the institution level do we have a mission, but then each of your departments or units, as we've been saying, will have a mission as well. And so you can develop your goals and what you measure as far as meeting those goals as it relates to your mission. Okay? It always has to be related back to the mission. Standard 4 is support of the student experience. So as non-classroom professionals, this standard is really speaking to you, okay? It's really about, for me, and for what I can interpret, the student life cycle. Okay, so it's the quality of what we're offering our students. It's policies and processes and procedures to admit, to enroll, to advise, to retain, to graduate, student success, orientation, all of those types of components to support the student's experience. We know students spend more time out of the classroom than in the classroom, right? You all know that? So what we want to do is make sure that we are providing them with an experience that they can flourish and grow and learn. That is the goal. Other things in the student experience, are students safe? Are their records safe? How do we accept transfer credit? How do we determine that? Counseling, our mental health, all of those types of things go towards standard 4, and a lot of your new plans will reflect on these types of things today. So what does Middle States want? What they want to see when they come and visit us in spring of 2023 they want to see a mature assessment program. And this comes right from Middle States. This is what they want to see when they come and visit and talk to all of us. Okay? They want to see that our units are aligned with our mission. They want to see that we are doing assessment and that we're using results and data to inform our next steps and inform our practice. We're not just doing things because we think it's a good idea or because it's working at a different college. We're doing these things because it's supported in our own data. And then also, being able to make changes as necessary based on that data. Okay? So those are some of the things that Middle States will expect to see from a mature assessment program. Okay, standard 6. Steve, I see a big smile on your face back there. Smiling, folks. Okay, so standard 6 is what I call the budget standard. So it's about planning, the process, the resources, the structures are aligned and sufficient to fulfill mission and goals. Okay? What Middle States wants to see is that we have well-defined decision-making processes, again, that are backed with data, assessment data. We also have to have the resources in order to fulfill our mission. Okay? Resources include fiscal, human resources, physical resources, infrastructure. What do you need to do your job? What do you need to fulfill your promise to the students? So all budget decisions must be based on that assessment data to show the need and then to move that dial and to fulfill that promise to students. Okay, and as you all know, we have Steve, the budget guy. Steve, wave. We got 2 hands up. So Steve started a few months prior to me, and he's refining our budget process here on campus. And so a lot of what we did in the assessment workbook, Steve looked at that very closely, and what we're doing is we're aligning assessment and budget together so that we're not asking you to do 2 totally separate things. Everything will be cohesive and seamless. At least that's the goal. Now, first iteration might not be perfect, but it's I'm really excited about it. We work really closely to align things, which is where they need to be. In the workbook, you'll also see a to-do list on the very first page, and the to-do list includes all the things you need to do for assessment for the spring, but it also includes all the things you need to do for budget for the spring. So that's just one example of how we're putting things in one area so they don't have a million different things going on. And the takeaway for this standard is that all requests for resources must include assessment data illustrating the need and the plan for improvement. Why you need it, and when you have it, what do you expect to improve as a result. So that is required. And Steve will outline his entire process in the next couple of weeks. Steve? So I get a lot of questions about when our visit is, so I thought I let everybody sort of know what we are required to do for the states. So every year we are required to do an AIU, the Annual Institution Update. A lot of this is data that's populated from iPads and Cirrus reporting and things like that, so there's a whole heck of a lot of manpower, although Joanna may disagree with me on that. But every year that data is compiled and submitted to Middle States. And then in the old way, we used to have a PRR, a periodic review report, which was very narrative, quite lengthy. The MPPR replaced that, and we are one of 15 colleges that this will be happening to in this spring semester. So the MPPR is nothing we do, it happens to us. So peer reviewers from Middle States look at our AIUs. It's supposed to be 4 years of AIU since it's new and not have the 1 year to look at. And they look at us and determine a bunch of things, and I'll get into that more in detail in a second. But that's this spring. And then our Self-Study Institute will have two co-chairs of the self-study that will go to the Institute and learn everything they need to learn. That will likely be Monica and myself. And then we'll compile a team of assessment allies to complete the self-study in 22-23. And in spring of 23 is when the Middle States will be here on our campus. So in March, we should hear about our MPPR. And the Commission can take action on the MPPR. At the most extreme end, if there's a lot of red flags from our AIU and from our data, they could require a site visit. More than likely, they will request more information from us on a number of areas, and the key areas of finances and student achievement. So when we hear from them, I will let you know what we hear. And it's a brand new process, so we're all learning it together. Okay, and in the site visit, 2023, so we have time. The whole purpose of the site visit is for our peer reviewers to come here and verify that everything we've submitted to them, that they've pulled through and read through, is accurate, and that we're doing what we're saying we're doing, and we're meeting the standards set forth by them. They will do, they say, over 200 interviews in 2 days. They will talk to most of you, and they expect everyone they talk to be able to talk about assessment, and what our campus is doing, and what you're doing to contribute to it. So, days like today are really important for us all to get on the same page, use common language, and things of that nature. And the important takeaway is that assessment and campus improvement, the lives of students, it's all our jobs, it's all our responsibilities. So we're all in this together, and I'm not really to feel that way, because that's how I feel. Okay, the assessment workbook. So, sort of grab this, you have it handy. The assessment workbook, I wanted to put together a resource for everybody, sort of a go-to guide on what is assessment, how to do it, something you can keep going back to and refining things. So if you open it up to the table of contents, and before I even get into that, a lot of people helped me put this together, and I thank them, especially Monica and the print shop. I see Kenny. I made a mistake at the first printing of the workbook, and they so graciously fixed all 250 workbooks for me. And I volunteered to go down there and work with them, but they said, no, get out. And they fixed them all, and I appreciate it very, very much. So a lot of hard work went into the book, and I hope you find it useful. I said to Monica that last night I sat down and I actually read it. I put the whole thing together, but I actually read it cover to cover, with sort of fresh eyes, since I did it before Christmas break. And I thought, wow, this is really helpful. So I hope you find that too. And I really welcome your feedback, because it is a living document. It is the first iteration. And if there's edits, there will be edits. Let me know what they are. If you have suggestions, please tell me. We want to get this as helpful as possible. And the next iteration will probably look very different as things change. So just keep in mind that this is version 1. So if you go to the table of contents, you'll see what's in the book. The first page, again, I'm going to refer back to that to-do list. I'm a big to-do list person. So everything is spelled out for you, what needs to happen as it relates to assessment and budget from today through June 30th. And that, again, is assessment and budget. What we're working on today starts on page 8, which is step 1. And step 1 is developing a 3-year unit assessment plan, which will require you to think about your mission, your overarching goals. So we're asking units to have 3 to 5 goals. Okay? Under those goals, you'll have outcomes which are measurable. You'll have 2 to 3 outcomes likely under each goal. And then you'll develop measures, 2 to 3 measures per outcome, and so on and so forth. So Monica, myself, Nicole will be walking around during that latter portion of the day when you're sitting and talking and working on these plans, and we're going to help you through that. Many of you have done this before, and so using this template is simply looking at what you have, refining it if need be, and putting it into the template. In Thankful Hall, in the assessment course, we have links there. It says step 1, spells it right out. You can open the Word document and complete it electronically, and then we're asking you to upload it there as well by January 21st. Okay? As non-classroom units, you will then move into step 2 later in the semester, which again is a lot of what we've already done with our strategic planning process and the work that Ellen has spearheaded. But again, we'll be putting it into the template and then putting it into Thankful Hall on March 13th. So just sort of a step into the future of what will be expected of you. This morning, working with everybody in the workgroups, I realized I really want you to read this because it really will help you in developing each step. So even though we're diving into step 1, please go back to those earlier pages because they really do inform you of how to complete the chart. Okay, so I'm going to touch on all of this already. At the end of the day, we also are asking that you complete a survey of the day, and that's also how we will assess the learning outcomes for the day. The only thing I didn't mention for spring is that my goal is to meet with every unit on campus by March 15th. Okay, so you'll hear from myself or from Andrea Dibble to schedule a 1-hour meeting with me and your unit to help you work through those steps in the workbook. My goal is to meet everybody where they're at and improve just a bit. Okay, we're all sort of, not all on different pages, but our levels are different with how we do assessment from advanced to beginner, and that's okay. So I'm going to meet you where you're at and help you improve so that we're all on the same page. So, save the dates. We have the next assessment days already planned, June 5th, 2019, January 9th of 20, and June 3rd of 20. Okay? And an important reminder is that all assessment data must be entered into Compliance Assist planning by June 1st. Which leads me to another point. This spring, Monica and Kelly Keck will be taking a close, hard look at our software, Compliance Assist planning, and it will look a little bit different when you go to do your assessment input this spring. We're hoping it can be make it even more user-friendly, and so on and so forth. So that is one of the big goals for spring, is to make that system work for us. Okay? Right. So I want to show you in Thankful Hall. I have it up here. That's not it. Here it is. Okay. So if you're in Thankful Hall, you go to My Courses. You should have the assessment course here. If you do not, you can always search the course for assessment and enter the course. Okay, it's open access. So once you're into it, you'll see here, step 1, which we're working on today, is Step 2, Step 3, Step 4. Now I will note Step 3 and Step 4 do not apply to you. So non-classroom units are Step 1 and Step 2. And then down here, you'll see the survey for today, the afternoon session, okay? So that's where we'll ask you to complete that at the end of today. And we'll also put that in by today with links so that people can do it there if they forget today. Okay? Questions that I can answer before I turn it over to Nicole? Yes? If you can't find it in Banco, Kelly Cat will be over to help.
Here I come.
Any other questions? Yeah, back here.
Unless there's two.
So what you enter in Compliance Assist is your annual assessment data. Okay, which you will see a copy of that template on page 14 of the workbook. So what I'm asking you to do on page 8 and 9 is a broader level assessment. So you're going to tell me your mission and your goals and how you're going to measure those goals over 3 years. So you're going to assess 1 to 2 goals per year. So at the end of the 3 years, all of your outcomes will be assessed. And annually is where you're inputting that information into Compliance Assist planning. Does that make sense? Right. So on this reminding me that a lot of you already have this stuff done, right? And so you're going to refine and add on perhaps today. Like I said, I was going to get a different spot, so depends on where you're at. Did I have another question over here? No? Okay. Then I will turn it over to Nicole Childerose.
Thank you, Katie. Can everyone hear me okay? So thank you for having me. I want to actually thank a few people. First of all, Katie. I met in the fall at a City Council on Assessment conference, so thank you for having me and the great work that she's doing. This workbook is a really important piece of the work that you'll be doing and how to sustain those efforts. I'd also like to thank Provost Legaikis, who serves on the City Council on Assessment with me, for you need leadership to keep these things going in a positive direction. And also all the work that Monica Little's done. We met years ago, 100 years ago when assessment was created. Actually, assessment isn't new at all, but so I did see that coffee came, so please, you will need to be caffeinated for this afternoon session. So please, you're not rude if you get up and grab some coffee or maybe tea, whatever's there. I also see that they've arranged a therapy style seating up here if anyone needs that later on. So, basically what I'm here to do today, and I'll share a little bit about my background, is just to really share some lessons learned over the years that I've seen Columbia Green, my institution where I come from, either fall into some tracks with this or do things really well, or in the years of going to many of the campuses and collecting lessons learned, I will try to just share all of the wisdom on that with you today. I'm not going to try to sell anything to you or make a pitch for, there's not one best practice. It's really all about promising practices and good conversation and making the most of our time. There is a lot of expertise in the room. You're the experts, and there's a lot of money in the room, human resources right now. So we want to make the most of all of that. That's what it's all about. So we really want to be getting it right and making it work, and in doing so, connect the dots. So while you're getting up and grabbing coffee, one of the things I like to do is infuse a little technology and assessment into this assessment presentation and kind of ask you, and I do have a really dry sense of humor, so I apologize if it offends anyone, but I want to know, and this is completely anonymous, thank you for getting my humor, how is assessment going for you? So if you have your computer out, or if you have like a smartphone and you're connected to the Wi-Fi, you can type in the address, poll everywhere. Ian Childrose 073 is what will bring you to the poll. You don't need to subscribe or anything. And so how is assessment going for you? I'll ask that question. You could answer, what is assessment? Hopefully few there. It's there. It's getting there. It's a well-oiled machine, or it couldn't be better. So as you participate in the poll, it will just automatically populate, or at least that's how the technology should work. And what I'm going to do is go back to this slide. So I'm going to let you work on that, and then I'm going to bore you while you're multitasking about a little bit more about me. I'm the strange person in the room. I try to go around and introduce myself to some of you. But anyway, you can call me Nicole. I come from really two places. My normal everyday job is as a history professor at Columbia Green Community College. I teach history, political science, psychology, sometimes philosophy. Yes?
Can we see the URL again, please?
Sure.
As soon as the displays the poll, will update the area to give you voting options.
So there's so I will, okay, I'll go in and work on that. We had some tech things happening because I know I activated the poll last night. But before you leave today, we'll have that up and running. And it's just kind of a good barometer as to where we're at. Thank you for pointing that out. So anyhow, before I entered higher ed, I was a high school teacher, so I taught seniors at a high school. I'm from the Albany area, and that's what really got me thinking early on in my career about assessment. So if any of you know anything about the K-12 world, it's all about assessment. And I actually had a professor at St. Rose. I'm a St. Rose alum. Any others out there? Okay. Great experience there. And I didn't know it at the time, but one of my faculty was actually an assessment guru. So I was learning from the best. He authored many books, and it was just an incredible experience. So I brought that to my position at the college. And when I had been on the job for 2 years teaching, Columbia Green was going through a Middle States visit and a reaccreditation. It comes up, periodically. So I was pulled in and asked to sit. I'll never forget. It was this big, imposing boardroom, and I sat on the outside rows, just observing. And I was kind of, just taking notes and taking in the whole thing. And unfortunately, at that time, the institution was placed on warning, like so many others at that time, for 2 standards in particular. In a year's time, I was voluntold to do all of these things and serve on all of these committees, and eventually we were fine. We did everything that we needed to do, but it really inspired me that this process could be simplified, mostly because unfortunately everybody was already doing what they were expecting, but just not communicating very well what they were doing. And we didn't have a budget for a lot of the technology that would have streamlined the processes. And so it was just a really impactful learning experience. So for about 10 years, I've been doing assessment-related things. And there are several folks at Delhi that have actually completed the SUNY certificate courses on assessment-related things, so projects that they're working on or efforts that they're doing. So it's really great that you're doing this great work and that you have champions of this here at Delhi. So, I've taught and created some of those courses. I have also myself created a resource guide, a lot like your workbook, and we've had great results with that. I draft an assessment newsletter twice a year. I am a PhD candidate. I have 2 cows. So I really appreciate some of the programs specifically that you have here that are hands-on, and the type of students and the setting here. So I tell you all of this just so you can see sort of where I'm coming from, and I hope that helps you make more sense of some of the lessons learned, because the experiences and the things that I've seen have definitely not all been pretty, and there's been pockets of really good promising practices. So I just, I'm going to be very frank and honest with you, and I want you to feel the same with me, and feel free to interrupt and ask questions or point things out as we go. Sound like a plan? Not enough caffeine. Okay. So I am, as I said, hoping to inspire and guide you to develop and or refine, or wherever you are, an active assessment plan. So what I mean by that is something that's actually working and delivering. I don't think that this should be something, I know it's something extra that you have to do, but you do have to do it. We all have to do it, but it should enhance what you're doing and not be something extra just to do it. Does that make sense? I also want to just give you some basic information, some networking, some tools. We'll talk a little bit about SMART goals. I also want to show you, especially in the later part of today's information, some examples of things that are out there that might help you or inspire you, or maybe relate to some of the work that you're already doing. I want to definitely feel that I left today having your questions answered, or also give you my contact to ask any questions whenever they come into your mind. I also want to, everyone in the room now, you will leave today as a leader, an ally for other people that will either be new hires coming in, or people that maybe aren't here that also have to do these things. So you really are all becoming an assessment ally or a trainer. So you can kind of think of this as some professional development, some training, and then go out in the world and understand from the beginning how this should go versus, falling down a place and maybe doing it the hard way. We want to avoid that, okay? So here's the way that the afternoon will sort of fall. This first bit of information is really the ideas, the lessons learned. I will share 3 lessons. I think less is more with this, so 3 main lessons. The PowerPoint I have shared with Katie so that the information will live somewhere. I also want to do a couple active brainstorming sessions that will hopefully get you talking and thinking about this in an incremental way. It doesn't make sense to just dive into this, throw something down and then leave it. I really want to just inspire your thinking there. We will then conclude with any questions that you have, but again, if they pop into your mind, ask them. I'm happy to answer. Showing you examples of these promising practices, and then just letting you get to work with this. Okay? All good? So the first sort of, because it's like really way too quiet in here, and I teach all the time, so I never stand at the front, especially not with a microphone, it's very awkward. So I want to be moving around, and each of you on the table should actually have a big sticky piece of paper, like a giant Post-it. If I've missed anyone, let me know. Okay. So I'll get those to you. We do have a marker shortage, but there are a couple markers out there, and if you have something on you to write with, that would be helpful, but we can share. And I want you to just take a few minutes in your unit or area, and you may or may not be sitting with those folks. It's okay if you're not. But I want you to think about, related to assessment, what are some strengths? What are some weaknesses? What are some opportunities? What are some threats? I will tell you in the beginning, I'll ask you to report out randomly on these. So please put something down, and I'll do this in sort of a random way. But try to touch on each of those things, and we'll take no more than 5 minutes to do this, so kind of quick. Let's get to it. Get up, grab some coffee, get talking. I'll come around with paper. Okay, everyone, I can interrupt you. Sorry, I didn't stay on point with a Bronco because I am a horse person, so yay, Broncos. I can tell you some of these strengths just being an outsider coming into Delhi. I stayed over last night and I've just, one thing that really comes through is the people. Everybody's been so friendly and welcoming, so that is a strength. Actually, believe it or not, related to assessment. But I want to see where you're thinking. So would anyone like to share? I'd actually like to start with, we'll start with strengths. We can be optimistic. Anyone want to share a strength? So that's one thing to think about. What is a big thing that you're proud of and how would you assess that? Because you want to be able to share this data regularly and perhaps market it eventually. Another strength. Okay. Could you speak on that?
Feature workforce development and the same processes. So over the years, we've developed a lot of very fine written processes that are.
That's so important about the processes, and if you can capture that somehow in your assessment, your unit plan, perhaps thinking about what things you might need to budget for in the future related to maintaining that and sustaining that. Sometimes it can be a little hard to share weaknesses because, of course, that's our vulnerable place. But I am going to be talking later about how assessment doesn't always have to be this positive thing, and that you have to have a little trust in this process. So is anybody going to be brave and share a weakness that we can think about working on? Thank you.
Weakness for the enrollment area could be technology. Different programs are used because of cost and things like that.
Makes sense. And I feel like I need the budget guy's autograph. So what he said was the technology, and your area was enrollment. So the technology and enrollment and budget guy, I'm going to need your autograph by the end of the day. So that's going to be an important thing perhaps to connect to budget alignment. A weakness, another weakness.
We're athletics, and you said weakness was our facilities. We don't have a turf field, but a lot of other state universities and other universities have facilities like that.
In terms of future planning. And let's do one more weakness. I'm just going where I see a hand, so don't think I don't like you if I'm not going to you.
There you go. So for the Academic Achievement Center, we see some potential weakness both with states, but also in doing actual assessment of our students and the connection of certain response rates that we get from doing assessment. Minimized numbers when trying to say this is truly how effective we are.
Great. Okay, so weaknesses can often lead to opportunities, or maybe not be related at all. So what are some opportunities that you see for your area, especially regarding assessment? Opportunities, these are the fun things. What opportunities are out there? So I'm going here, then I'm going there.
I was sitting all morning, so I'm really
At the library, we're in a very unique position. We're kind of the crossroads between academic and student life. So we see students in both aspects of their life on campus. So we have a lot of opportunities to do things that other departments and areas don't get to do. So we get to do a lot of fun and academic things. So we have a real opportunity there.
So part of the work that SCOA does, the SUNY councils, we go to these 64 SUNY schools, and I'll tell you that in all the years, the libraries are like the best assessment. So, hi, we applied for an career center because it's a new unit that's being conceptualized. So our opportunities is that this whole thing is everything.
It could be scary. It was under our weaknesses too. So.
Okay. One more opportunity. And then we'll think about your threats. Give me your biggest threat.
Health and housing services, we have electronic medical record system. It has a lot of data reporting capability that we're not fully utilizing and could be utilizing more extensively.
Okay, so I want to hear two threats. Anybody have a threat? Threats. These are the scary things, so you're the realists among us.
So I'm in grants, and changing marketplace is a threat related to grants certainly. And then just here on the campus, the threat could be that we don't have adaptable or big ideas, if you will, to actually meet what's out there in the marketplace.
Very important to hear about these threats, and we'll hear one more.
For us, it would be also rapid changes to education and technology. So you have things like our built-in analytics for social media. There might be a new platform, or a platform might disappear, or we're all kind of stuck with the algorithm. So that can change any day on us. And then so to compare apples to apples year over year, new emotion to express a new platform, or a new light or unlight, or whatever.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. So if other things come to mind while we're talking today, just jot them down. Feel free to jot them down on the big paper, and I just thank you for being willing to share. It's a great warm-up. So over the years, one of the most important lessons that I learned is that your assessment, this plan that you have to leave here today, it probably already exists. So it's really just about sometimes putting the language to it and actually putting it in that form. So the template is important, but I think mostly what you need to produce already exists. So don't try to invent something. You know, this was my favorite thing to do as a kid, to connect the dots, because it's already there. But you can put your own twist on it. So it already exists, remember that. I dug into some important Delhi things. So your mission, the college mission, is incredibly important because you all need to see where you fit in this. And it's really important too when these middle states things come up that you recognize what the mission is. And your mission is kind of cool. It's focusing on grit and determination. Like, I love grit. That's so cool. And this inclusive community. And so I don't want to steal any thunder, but this, this stuff will be coming out later on through your strategic framework. This might be new. But if you can recognize where you fall in this, and we'll talk about other things that you could connect to, but ultimately your mission, your outcome, your goals should in some way map to or connect to this. Your vision statement is that you transform lives. Think about, how are you doing this? There's a lot of strengths that you identify. How are you doing this? Maybe it's not every day that in a non-classroom operational unit you're seeing students, but the work that you're doing is still delivering on this. And then there's some values that you can think about connecting to as well. So learning, collaboration, diversity, community, and I'll talk more specifically about examples that hopefully get you thinking more about this. Another thing that you should be considering as a non-classroom group is still the ILOs. So in assessment, there's all these acronyms. So institutional learning outcomes. What you're saying here as a college is that every student that leaves here is leaving with these things, with these deliverables. There's probably somewhere in any of these 6 that you connect to. And again, these might change in the year ahead. They might shift a bit or be condensed. But where in your work are you helping students, maybe with technology or through communication? Is any of the work that you do feeding that? Maybe you're not seeing a connection, maybe you are now, but we'll work more on that, okay? And again, with regard to the strategic framework, this is another really relevant, important thing to connect to. And I don't want to steal anybody's thunder with this, so we'll just kind of like leave it at that for now, right? Okay. You might also want to be thinking about your philosophy, and as far as lesson 2, it is always, always, always an assessment. It's about driving student success. How is the work that you're doing in athletics, in enrollment, in technology, in the business offices, helping students be more successful? Is it about streamlining services? Is it about giving them tools, information, making someone else's job happen, getting them in the door? How are you doing that? And one of the best things about assessment, and again, I love farms, but what we don't want to happen is that we're working in what they always say silos. So that means like you're not dialoguing, you're not connecting with others. Like today, that's what we're doing. We are stepping out of these silos and we are having conversations. So you might find that where your work lies falls in either 1 or 2. In a program level division school or service that you're enabling to do that work, or more at the institutional level. Either or. So in assessment, in that world, we tend to think about academics and then non, but it's really all one thing. It goes back to the student. That is an important lesson. The third and last lesson is that you should be designing your plan with the end in mind. So I made a really big mistake in my travel here, and I didn't look through all the directions on my GPS, and I drove 20 miles of dirt road, which I live on a dirt road, and I'm very comfortable in that rural setting, but I was like, wow, I should have looked at the directions first. So you don't want that to happen with anything that you do. You want to think about your end product first. And just to give you some middle states language, they want this to be periodic, not episodic, if you've heard that ever before. So they want it on a routine schedule, happening, ongoing, systematic. They want this to be sustainable, so you shouldn't have 20,000 things that you're trying to look at all the time. You should narrow it down to 3 things. I think the workbook says 3 to 5 things that you're looking at, assessing. Sometimes less is more. And they want it to be mature. So you have to show that you are doing this by your next visit. You really need to be showing, some sort of progress at things that you've identified, work that you've done. And it doesn't always have to be like good results, but just what are you working on? So that's the mature piece. So again, regularly done, relevant, shared with appropriate parties. So just taking a few minutes, going around, talking to all the other units. And I know Katie's going to be doing a fantastic job with this, just getting all of the puzzle pieces together. Connected to, so at Columbia Green, we connect to our strategic plan, but in your case, it'll be your strategic framework, to your budget requests. That is an important piece that they are looking for. So if we're doing it just because we have to, these are things we have to do. But more importantly, if we're doing this to benefit students, we're looking for these types of things. I do want to just quickly read you this lesson learned. So one of the things that we do on the City Council of Assessment is we provide to the city provost recommendations based on what the campuses are working on and accreditation needs and what we see out in the fields. So Middle States teams appear to be looking for institutional effectiveness assessment plans which reflect mission and goals, so we talked about that, curriculum and governance procedures and accreditation standards, and which include the content below. And it should be noted that implementation guidelines do not necessarily need to be included in the plan itself, but may be provided in other documents, and easily accessible, useful to the institution, informative for a visiting team. So I just want to say this to this group, not because you're putting together reports to these, accrediting bodies, but because you're supplying that information. Without the work that you do, none of this other stuff can happen. So that's what you're doing through this process. These documents are an opportunity for institutions to also document the breadth and depth of their assessment efforts and to provide ongoing records of these activities, thus providing evidence of comprehensive, organized, and sustained process for assessing the attainment of the institution's mission and goals. So I'm not for reading slides, but it's important enough information that we need campuses to know so that you can surpass those accreditation standard speeds. As far as assessing your non-classroom operations, some things to be thinking about are just first off identifying those goals. And I think that SWOT roundtable activity can help you get thinking about that, unless you all might be in different places. So you may have those, they may need to be revised. Another thing I want you to think about is, could you collaborate possibly with another unit? So if, maybe technology could combine with enrollment operations and do, that would be okay, right? A plan, submit 2 plans, but be working toward the same goal. We have that happen a lot throughout the SUNY schools. So think about opportunities where your work might overlap. Okay? We will talk a little bit later about the measures that you're using and all of that stuff. But there's 2 pieces of this: the data that you'll be collecting, and then how that's going to align to the bigger picture. So that's what you're working on today. Okay, so keeping on time, the second activity that I just want you to think about as an individual or with your immediate team are these questions. So what is a problem that you are hoping to solve in the upcoming year? Sometimes when we get into working on assessment, we forget that we're just trying to solve problems or, again, capture the important work that we're already doing. I also want you to think about, and you can be thinking about this while I'm talking, just so we can stay rolling along with the time and everything. I want to give you enough time to actually work on this. Will this take more than a year, and why? So how long would you need to actually assess this? So maybe like in the example with the technology, it has to be quick because things change. Or maybe you want to look at something more longitudinally over like a longer period of time, and why? And then the third question is, how can you relate this problem to the college mission, maybe to ILOs, or to the strategic framework in some way? So like, what is this relating to or connecting to, and why is that important in your area? Fourth, does this problem, this thing, these things require money? And if so, you want to know that at the beginning so that you can be tracking that. And then if it doesn't necessarily, and probably any leaders, I don't know if Kelly's here anymore, but would you like a budget? And why? So that could be another thing. That's a great opportunity to think about, and why. You're not limited always, and that's where assessment can be really helpful. When we started doing this at Columbia Green, everybody was like, oh, another thing to have to do. But then when people saw great things happening because of this, it's like, yeah. Okay? Alright, so all of the procedural stuff, the workbook stuff, this is all important. And so next slide, just as far as promising practices, that's what I said I would share. You want to make sure that you do have some sort of set timeline. Make sure that that works with what the institution's doing, which there's a great plan in the beginning of that workbook that you can refer to as far as like a to-do list, things that are coming up. Indicate who is responsible for doing this. Maybe it's not just you, maybe it's going to be a team. How will you delegate? Is it you doing all of this? How will you manage that? I think it came up a bit ago on benchmarks. So this can be a really tricky thing for our area. So I am a faculty, but all the assessment work that I do is in the non-academic area. So we can help you, Katie can help you, Monica can help you. You might have great resources resources as far as what benchmarks you're using and why they make sense for you or not. And then we'll talk a little bit later about measures, other detailed things. But all of these parts of this process are really leading us to what we call a culture of assessment. So like, what do we mean by that? And do you feel like you have that? And I'm gonna get the poll up and running, but I mean, you're having an assessment day. What does that mean for you? So when we're talking about this, and it is an important thing, it's embedded in the new standards of Middle States. We're not saying that it should be this, although that would be nice on a day like today. So it's not all like, just sunshine and rainbows. It should also, so I teach history. This is the 30 Years' War. It should definitely not be that. Okay? And some places, unfortunately, it has been, but it should be something like this. So I included a couple of my favorite pictures. These are, I was able to use assessment results with a couple team members in my department. We have clubs on campus, so this is non-classroom assessment. And we were able to actually make a case to budget taking these clubs, paying their way, so that they could visit 15 historical sites in our area. So this was the Bronk House in our area, so near Hudson. And it's the oldest Dutch settlement in the area, so we were able to, that's one of the places we took students. And we were able to use assessment to be able to make a case for this and get this funded so that they didn't, for some of these students, it was the first time they'd ever been to a historic site. And it was just a great experience. And then, I thought I'd share my Women in U.S. History class. Some of them are in the club. So it's like the happiest moment when it's all about the students. That's really what needs to drive this. But wouldn't it be nice to make this classroom a smart classroom? Who could help me on campus to do that? Do we have to physically take students to historical sites, or can we bring entire schools using technology? These are all the kinds of things that assessment can help us with. There's actually on the SUNY Council on Assessment website a lessons learned link. You have to do a little digging to find it. We're working on this site. But with regard to assessment plans, these are some of the lessons learned. So the clearly articulated outcomes, we'll work on those later. Distribution of and about, discussion about assessment results, like we're doing today. Use of these results is very, very important. I can't emphasize that enough. In planning, budgeting, decision-making, and also updating institutional goals. So you might find that in 5 years or 6 years, the outcomes, the ILOs won't be the same because things need to evolve and be dynamic, and that should come from the work that you're doing. So I'm going to have you hold your leaders to that, making sure that your data is used, and I know they will, okay? And also just making sure that all this, the plans, the information that you're doing is located somewhere centrally, which I know is because you're submitting things digitally, so that's great. These are just some of the overall lessons learned. And in the presentation, when this is sent to you, here's some links so you can see our website and the tools. And also I shared Columbia Green's assessment tools just because I could. And I'm not saying that anything's stellar, but I shared because I could. So there are some promising practices there. So what I want to do now is take a few-minute break and then get back to work with section 2 of this, which is more of the hands-on applied stuff. So thank you for being great so far. We'll come back in a few minutes. 2:15, grab coffee.
had it up on. Don't open it. So I'm going to hold it. Yeah. This tab.
So just so everyone knows, the poll is now up and working.
Oh, really? So, perfect time. Yeah, just so you guys know. was like trying to get on, and she's like, I don't know, she's like, I don't want us to try to make it for me, just for me, but you know, just so you know. And then she just goes, oh, nope, never mind, it's a nationwide Zoom outage. So, yeah, so I just wanted to let y'all know. I probably don't. So, in case anybody else is like, has been trying to log in or is having issues or, yeah. Thank you. Yep. She might have gone, because she's on Zoom all the time, she probably tried to troubleshoot it and found something. But she texted, she was texting me a little bit ago, we saw it. I'm going to try, so I don't know if it may be back up by now, but... Well, I think the link went out and they'll have to do I'm not sure, but that was just the message that Amanda sent us. Good, so. Thank you so much. Well,
finished getting their coffee, and apparently there's a nationwide Zoom outage, so we've been Zooming ourselves.
We've experienced an outage of our meetings platform 3 minutes ago. We've experienced an outage of our meetings platform. Services have now been restored, and we are continuing to monitor our systems. We have determined the root cause and are taking steps to ensure that this does not reoccur. We sincerely apologize for any productivity issues. And that was posted on the
Before you start this.
I mean, I'm outside. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. This session will be a little bit more practical on just an overall discussion, promising practices, and to really prep you for the working session, which we're hoping to get started definitely by 2:40. So, like to stick to the agenda as closely as possible. Is there anyone that has any questions or comments from the first discussion? Not yet? Okay.
Can I ask you a
Just now?
About an hour ago, but it's just
Okay.
hopefully.
So some of the things that we are going to just continue thinking about and working on as we're planning and doing and checking and acting, it really is this cyclical process. Just some common language and identification of terms. And one of the things that I love about your workbook is that it has a glossary section so that, you know, one person's not saying that a benchmark is something and someone else is calling it something. So you really need to have that standardization, so I'm really glad to see that. That's going to help a lot. You have the standard template, which is on page 8 of your workbook. So you can be looking at that. The timeline, the dates, the expectations that are clear, and some of the things that you hear about, like in regards to assessment language, are closing the loop in this assessment spiral. So, you know, saying this on behalf of the SUNY Council on Assessment, there really is never a loop that's really closed. So it is more of this spiral that we're working on. I know it sounds a little daunting, but it kind of is the work that never ends. So I don't want you to think that once you have an assessment complete, like it's done, and then you can, sometimes something is done, but then you have to move on and show how you're using the results and be tracking that. So think about this in a more cyclical way, and that always tends to make it more meaningful so that it's not something that's just shelved and hanging out there never to be found again. Important for this group, because I did attend the academic session in the morning. But for your group in particular, just defining what co-curricular is, so this might pertain to some of you. This is all the activities, the work that contributes to academic learning experience, but that takes place outside of the walls of the classroom. Sometimes it can be in conjunction with what's happening directly in a classroom, but more often than not for your units, it's going to be outside.
and especially any activity that provides students with any opportunity to learn or develop active participation in college life type skills, or in retention activities that you're doing, or with diversity or inclusion or financial aid decisions, or the resources that they're getting at the library, on and on. We'll talk more specifically about examples, but and these can be led by anyone, so maybe even students themselves can be working on these things, but everybody has to have goals and outcomes regardless of who they are. So, back in the 90s, the good old days, we were talking a lot about how, to think about in higher ed. I wasn't in higher ed at that time, but apparently they were thinking about how much time students are spending and how we should be thinking about assessing these things. People always think that assessment is new because it's like a buzzword thing in higher ed now, but it's not new at all. So if you go back into journals from the 90s, they were saying 80% of students' time at college is spent on non-classroom activities. So as a faculty, I just wanted to see that and pass out. But then in the non-academic work that I'm doing, it's true that our students have so much other contact. So it's critical that we are assessing them, of course. And just think about experiences that are taking place in residence halls, organizations, any social settings, really anything that's tied to their experience. So, this is not new stuff by any means. So at its most basic level, the plan that you're working on, and this I stole from Katie and the workbook and some of the conversations that we've had, is number one, which student learning or operational outcome will you focus on? So think about focusing this on 3 things, not much more than that, maybe 4 things, outcomes. Number 2, what evidence are you going to narrow down to use to determine how well those outcomes are being achieved? So what is the best case that you can make for doing this, to solve this problem if you're thinking of it in that way? And then thirdly, how will you use this information to improve your program, your area, or the services? So it's very simple, straightforward way to be thinking about this. So that's a very helpful way to look at it. As far as the expectation for you, your timeline is, and your expectation is that all units, academic and non-classroom, are completing annual assessments of their selected outcomes. This is ongoing, all the time, not going away. And now, right now, in red, each unit is developing their 3-year assessment plan, so the bigger 3-year picture plan. At the end of 3 years, by 2021, all unit outcomes will have been assessed at least once. So as we are moving around the room later today, if you have questions on timeline, expectations, related things, please feel free to ask, because everyone here wants you to leave feeling confident and comfortable with the plan of what you're doing. So this is an example of information that I took from Columbia Green's institutional report card. And this is actually kind of circulated widely. One of the things that we've done over the last 8 years is taken all of our institutional data collected from faculty and we call it non-academic units, so that's their non-classroom. And we create a yearly report card. So at our All College Day, when we have everybody together, much like today, we share our report card with one another. We talk about this and we see areas that we can improve and things that we're doing well and how we're making sense of this. So this one of our goals as an institution, of course, is quality education. So it doesn't get any simpler than that. And we identified an objective on teaching and learning and the environment of that. And if you remember back, I was standing in front of that chalkboard. One of the things that we wanted was to actually improve the physical setting and, revise some of our classrooms and build some buildings. And so we measured this through 5 years, and actually yearly reports as well. And then we also polled students, so SUNY does that big SOS thing, we use some of that information, and we came up with just an at-a-glance look at how we're doing with that. We were doing pretty well. I want to show you another example, though this one's probably more relevant to you. This was a direct use of non-classroom assessment in that same report card. And this was actually coming from the president's office. So our board of trustees does an assessment. We have a little different, obviously, setup because we're a community college. But our president's office does an assessment yearly as well. And the president and staff sat down and drafted a plan. And this is a direct use of that plan. So providing business and industry training needs for its local community. I think this had something to do with, at the time, Startup New York stuff and employability for students. But as a group, we talked about this. So again, it's the importance of all of that planning work that you're doing and how you're going to use that institutionally, okay? This is an example from UAlbany, so they were okay with me sharing this. Before coming to Delhi, I've been to UAlbany and some other places. Maybe I'll share some Delhi stuff to other schools in the future. I'm hoping that. But this is a great example of how their units were mapping to strategic goals and making those connections. So their overall overarching goal is to improve student learning experience. They wanted to build a new residence hall. They, came up with a plan for how that was going to happen. Of course, UAlbany is absolutely huge. So it's just to show you small Columbia Greens example, big UAlbany, and where you can be sort of in between and doing this. Everybody's doing it, it's just how it works for them. One of the other things that we will talk about, and I don't want to confuse you at all on the differences between outcomes and goals, whatever you're doing, whether they're outcomes or goals, they really should be as specific as possible, as measurable as possible, as achievable as possible. But I do want you to remember on the achievable piece that assessment should not be evaluation. So in no way should sharing a negative assessment result threaten your employment or something horrible like that. You need to, as a culture, make sure that the trust is there, that you can honestly share your results. Make sure that it's always relevant and make sure that there is some time-boundness to that. And as far as outcomes versus goals, because you'll need to be thinking about this, outcomes are the broader statements. So in your glossary, these are clearly defined. But I just have on the bottom here some examples of what a goal might look like versus an outcome. So you can just take a minute and be thinking about that. Your goals should really be student-centered in any of the service areas, and they must align to measurable outcomes. So you can kind of think about it in this way. What needs to be accomplished to increase student fill-in-the-blank? Retention, learning, diversity, inclusion, whatever it is, or maybe decrease, or fill in the blanks, something like that. Any questions? No questions isn't always good, so we'll keep going nevertheless. Your outcomes might either be operational, based on the service, the duty, the task that you're performing in your area. So I want you to think about, can you see how this duty connects to student success here? So some common places where I see operational outcomes are in safety, security, purchasing, bursar, registrar, daycare services, accounting, maintenance, grounds, facilities. I probably didn't include everything, but common operational type outcomes. Student learning outcomes, commonly I see in student services, financial aid, orientation programs or leaders, residence life, foundation, grants, accessibility services, any student success services, library. Doesn't have to be this way, I'm just sharing what tends to be the case. You could be in maintenance, but have student learning, whatever, okay? But just some ideas. As far as defining more of these terms, indirect versus direct measures, I promised that, because this stuff is kind of boring and in the weeds, but I promised I would talk about this, so I will. As far as indirect measures, these are things that are surveys, interviews, course evaluations, any of the SOS data, retention reports, graduation, placement. If you have a question as far as, is this specific piece indirect or direct, I'm sure you can ask any of your assessment leaders, and I'm happy to help. Sometimes also keep in mind that a certain measure might be direct in your case, so it's not always like set in stone. There have been times where we've used like rubrics as indirect or direct depending on what we're looking at. Direct examples, accuracy reports, timeliness of financial reports, participation numbers. There's a whole host of other measures, and again, it's dependent on what you're looking at, and I know that your workbook spells this out as well. There's also a blue sheet of paper somewhere when you came in, I think you picked that up. There's some other examples to get you thinking about these things. Any questions on indirect versus direct? You can quiz me. Okay. All right. Other terms and tools, qualitative, you'll hear come up, quantitative. Do you all know the difference? So the quantitative is the numerical quantities, percentages, statistics, math people out there. You know, this is your life, okay? And much of the work we do, this is our life. Qualitative, so as a PhD candidate, I'm a qualitative researcher, so what I'm looking at are conversations, interviews, text, audio, video, any sort of rich, thick, descriptive type information that you're pulling from students or other things that you're looking at. And as far as benchmarking, this came up earlier, benchmarking is just the standard that you're setting. What are you looking at, a national report or some other tool to benchmark how you're doing? Questions? Okay, a couple more things and then we will get you working. So here I just wanted to share, we call it a AAA plan, so this is kind of like what you're working on today at Columbia Green. I did black out the author's name because I just wanted to kind of pull this apart with you a little bit. So this was students and enrollment management area, and the department was records and reg, and they developed a goal. So I know it's small, so I'll just read it. The goal was to reduce the number of errors revealed by SUNY Cirrus error checking process. So that was their goal. So I just wanted to quiz you a little bit and see if you've been paying attention. So can you see any areas of possible improvement in terms of this goal, or if you're looking further in the plan? Yes?
So I would say maybe you have some kind of quantitative information, so reduce it by 10%, 20 students, I would want some kind of number, and in the next academic year, next semester, those sorts of things, yeah.
Very good. Very important. Okay? So the goal should be measurable, should be benchmarked somehow. What else? Any other, come on, we love to correct things. What else could be improved? Or in the plan. So the rest of the plan goes on to say that this office will run additional manual reports prior to verification to find any correct miscellaneous data entry errors. Then they will track it by tracking an error checking report. And then less than 10 errors, they would feel good. Good to go? Let me go to the back and then Oh, here. Oh, this is fun. I get to walk. Oh, you love to correct things.
If I understood the question, you're looking for what's missing in there as far as what we're talking about. And I'm thinking, I don't see how it connects to the mission of the institution.
So the comment, the improvement was, how does this connect to the mission? So we want to make sure that these are always connected somehow to the bigger purpose. This kind of seems like just a normal job task, like do the job correctly, right? How is it really enhancing the student experience? And he had a point.
I was just going to say, why does we use some charismatic? Who's it going about?
Right, yes, good. So try to think about making your plans or your goals significant enough so that it's actually, getting something accomplished, okay? By the end, actually working with their assessment ally, records, and red try to grade plans, so it's a happy ending. We do actually have some criteria to ensure that these are good. So one of the things that we share in the SUNY Council on Assessment courses for IE, institutional effectiveness, is that we want to make sure that they're timely, that the mission and values are connected, that the goals are set properly, that you're using quality evidence, that it's being analyzed in a quality way, and that contextually it's appropriate, so that it's fitting within the scope of the area or work that you're doing. And again, there's great opportunity for collaboration. This can be a really good thing in the long term. So as you're working on this, have some trust. You might not actually at the end achieve the goal, but if you're documenting how you're getting there, that's the important point of all of this. So kind of take that leap, have trust. I told you that I wouldn't try to sell anything. City Council that I co-chair, every year we give an annual report to the provost. So we report back on what's working well, what some recommendations are that we have. So I can assure you that it's not always a perfect process, but I can also assure you that it's not going away. And if I had to tell you like the top 8 things that I love most about assessment, the number one thing is that it gets us talking. So I know it's like I've met a lot of friends this way, but I didn't know, like at Columbia Green, what did purchasing really do to help the student experience? So I got to sort of step out of my silo and talk to other people about what they're doing. I think that's been the best thing. The planning, reporting, tracking, and reflecting. I am definitely a type A person, so I love to plan and plan some more and have a planner for the planner, and I think that's a common personality thing. But I think that there's something to be said at least about reflecting on the work that we do, and assessment allows us to systematically do that and also document that, and that's a great tool to actually jot down these reflections and have a record. I've said it before, but assessment is not evaluation, so it could be a very dangerous sort of slope to go on that path, but it can be a tool where important fixes are made, so you can identify a problem and then act on it before it becomes a really big problem. I really love the idea of making evidence-based decisions and just not things at whim. I think history proves to us why that can be a problem. And I think it's important that we're sharing to students and their families who are investing in education why we decide to do the things that we do. I think that it provides us feedback where we otherwise might not have gotten feedback. And that's an important piece. Make sure that you're getting feedback on the plans that you submit, that loop, if you will, is not closed but spiraling somewhere. Transparency is a hugely important thing. And another great tool, especially in a challenging higher ed moment, is that we can use these data points as marketing strategy. We can share this data and potentially increase enrollments or retentions or these important things. And then lastly, with diversity, I have to say that in the last 10 years, the SUNY Council has diversified, and also the work we're doing is diversified. The students that we serve are becoming more and more diverse, and that is a great thing. So I love that assessment has enabled us to meet that need and to accomplish more and more diversity. So I love that. So I am a picture person, so I know it might feel a little bit like this. Does anybody know off chance where this is? It's one of my favorite trips ever out west to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And again, we left without a plan. So it was really hot in the spring. We went to Bandelier, one of the oldest human settlements in our country. And I had a little backpack and not much water. And I really wanted to go see this Kiva ruin where these settlements were. So then we encountered these ladders, which I was not prepared or dressed appropriately for. But anyway, I had a little trust and took the leap and made it to the top. So again, that's why I say always plan with a purpose and like begin with the end in mind, because I would have enjoyed that experience much more had I planned appropriately. You are, as a group, developing some sort of consensus about what you're hoping to get out of this and how you're meeting that mission. So keep doing that. Did make it to the top. It was, we were at a super high elevation and it was 2,100 feet of climbing that day. So we did rescue a Canadian woman who had like a blood sugar issue, and it was a pretty memorable day. I don't expect that assessment day will be that memorable, but something sort of, well, we did break Zoom, so that's epic. I don't know if this will play. But you know what it's going to say, right? So can we all just tell each other? 1, 2, 3. May the force be with you. Okay, so here's my contact information. I'll be here while you're doing this work. Thank you for your time and the work that you're doing. Okay, everyone, we are going to ask now that you start to work on step 1 in the books, page 8 and 9 again. And if you prefer to work electronically, you can go into the Maple Hall course and download the Word document and start typing in. Monica, myself, and Nicole will sort of be filtering around the room to help you and answer questions and help you do the work.